Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today, Isaac is going to confess that he has done a rewrite. Today,
It's
or
true.
last week, using AI, and we are going to dive deep. But first, it is the 3-year anniversary of the show. So, round of applause to
Woo!
us. Almost every week for 3 years.
Yes.
This will be like episode 149 out of a potential 162. So, go us.
Go us. We might not have the most fans in the world,
We
but we've
definitely do
still
not have
made
the
it
most.
longer than most people do when they
Yes.
try to keep a podcast going.
We are definitely in the top 1% for keeping at it. Maybe not the top 1% for listeners, but we are
Most
here.
improved award.
Most consistent.
All
All right,
right.
so Isaac, you've rewritten something. So lay it on us.
Yeah. So this is over the weekend I tried out some Claude tools, and I had an old project, and you're going to hear this a lot because whenever there's the context of people digging into Claude Cowork or whatnot, uh, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I just dusted off this old project of mine that I never got around to, and I was finally able to complete it because it was just a lot of effort." But with the way you can use Cowork or code, you can have it running in the background and just working for you while you do something else. So I could go and start a process on my computer and then go upstairs and I do my day job and then come back and it's generated some stuff and I can just kind of keep auditing.
Okay, so what was what's this legacy, or not legacy, what was this
Mhm.
side project that you never got around to finishing or was in a bad state?
Yeah, over this past summer, I was trying to make like an events aggregator for Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
The main problem was I had noticed one day when I was at one of the venues that I had missed a lot of really cool shows. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know they were coming through here. And then when I would look up not specific names of artists, but just like cool things upcoming, live shows nearby,
Mm-hmm.
things kept pulling in from larger cities. Like I'm in a suburb of Denver, so I kept getting a lot of stuff for Denver, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine. But there were a lot of really cool shows that were like 10 minutes away from me. Like even the one I missed was like in Boulder, which is slightly closer to me. And there was a couple of just other bars nearby that were having really cool, neat events, just open mics and things like that. And they're
Mm-hmm.
so hyper local, the events just weren't showing up. Um, and when I navigated to these hyperlocal websites, a lot of times you can understand why they weren't showing up. They weren't using events. Like you can store events in certain types of data that makes it a certain format rather that makes it
Mm-hmm.
more scrapable by Google. So you get those nice little event formats whenever you look something up on Google.
AMP or
Um,
something.
hmm?
Isn't
AMP?
that called AMP? AMP? No.
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Anyway.
Um, or you can publish it on like Meetup or Eventbrite or any of these platforms, and then they will share them. But
But it
these
requires you to make the positive step of publishing it.
right, yeah, and some of these places are not super technologically advanced, or they publish on a very old page, or it's one of them's like like the Broomfield government park page where the amphitheater publishes stuff, and it's just like this really old page, and there's not even a feed. It's just an old calendar that I don't even know if it's a plugin. It's just someone made their own calendar a while back. So you can see why the events wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
pull. So I made this project, and everyone's going to boo me for this. I built it in WordPress, mainly because I've worked a lot in WordPress, and I knew a lot of the plugins for it. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
if I want to bootstrap this really quickly and not spend a lot of time on some like the API and the events calendar and things like that, I can just build it real quick. It'll be slow. WordPress isn't very fast,
Right.
but I knew how to use Lightsail, which I used a while back for like a cheap server essentially in AWS, publish WordPress on it, and just get the ball rolling. So I built it there, and then I installed a bunch of different plugins that I knew that I needed for this thing, and I
Mm-hmm.
got a rudimentary version of this going. Um,
And how long did that take you?
uh, Setting everything up, like including like the domain configuration to the Gmail workspace account because I wanted a fresh email to be using for this whole
Mm-hmm.
thing, and then getting the WordPress stuff up and going. I was able to do it probably over the weekend. Like
Okay.
I don't know how many hours I spent into it. Let's just say 12 hours over one weekend where I just kind of really got obsessed about getting it up and going.
Okay, so that's, I'll call it the front end, right? So you've
Hmm.
got it, there's a whole lot of stuff here, but you've got WordPress, and you're using WordPress to show events and make it nice and make it pretty and have RSS and all of the other boilerplate stuff that you need for a website.
Hmm.
But you were mentioning that a lot of these venues have terrible websites, so WordPress isn't going to pull that data in.
Right. So for the ones that weren't using, like I found out that even if one website didn't have the events in the right feed, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they published also to Meetup. And if I
Mm.
could pull Meetup from, like they published to both places, the website and the Meetup, which was awesome. So for the ones that worked for, I could go ahead and get some things on my website. But for
Okay.
most of them, this wasn't the case. So I used AI back then to try, I forget which service it was, but essentially you could have it, uh, you could tell it to go to this URL, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't smart enough to kind of like dance around the website and try to find the right URL. So I would go find the events page itself, give it to it, and say, "Hey, given this page, and load the HTML and parse everything you think is an event on this page."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then for the ones that it was just like a summary of the events, I could have it go to the link itself once it found the event, which if it went to the link itself from the events page, you could get the direct event and it would have a lot more data about the event. And it took a fair amount of work to tweak it.
Okay, so now we have sort of a front end, which is WordPress, which is displaying data from a database in a nicely set up package. And then there's this back end, which is a collection of scrapers
Mm-hmm.
that you made mostly using AI, where you said, hey, local bars and all these other things. I've making a list and having AI write me a scraper, and then it's working theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm shoving data into my WordPress database, and now it's up on the
Right.
website. Okay, so you got
Yep.
these two parts.
And the scrapers took a long time to make and get right.
Yeah, that's why there's not a
Um,
lot of aggregators.
yeah, and you had to make a custom one for each site that you would go to. So it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of frustrating. And if someone changed their site, they would obviously break, and so you'd have to also be looking to see if someone changed their site, like dramatically changed their site. I mean, like the way
Mm-hmm.
they've, which is not common, but it could happen. And so
Right.
you would
This
need
is
some kind of
why
way of self-reporting.
having these things is traditionally been very expensive, and there weren't a lot of them. They were all labors of love
Yeah.
because you needed someone to do this data entry piece, and it was expensive.
Yep. So I was excited because once I got it working for a couple of venues that I went to, it solved my problem. But I was
That's
like,
good. Solved
yeah,
your problem.
right. And actually, there's two events that I've been to since then that I went to because my own newsletter alerted me they were coming, and I'm like, okay, this is still solving my problem. It's my own little project, sure, and it's fun. Um,
They're just as a side note for being a good netizen. Did you reach out to the bars and let them know that you had done this? Did you do
yes,
any promotion?
I did it before I made it because like I figured if even if their tech stack wasn't modern, they might be using like Cloudflare or something on top of that, and it might see me as an attack if I start
Mm.
like hammering their site with a scraper. So at the very beginning, I said, "Hey, I would like to write something." Like I said, first, do you guys have an API I can use, or do you publish to Meetup or Eventbrite? And if not, do you mind if I pull data from your website and display them on my website, try to link them back to you? Because essentially,
Mm.
it's good for them too, right? Like if my website also gets people back to theirs, I figured they would be happy with it. And
Right. This
everyone
is
who
a side
responded,
project. You don't have a the business model is it's my passion and
right.
yeah.
So yeah, I sent them out to a lot of local places. One of them is Fox Theater in Boulder, Boulder Theater, Boulder,
Mm.
um,
Good name.
Prost Brewing, North Glen. So a lot of these little places that are just pretty close to me. Doghouse Music Studios, the Inn Lafayette, and they all got back and said it's fine. In fact, the Broomfield Amphitheater place said we would love for you to do this because we've seen very little foot traffic this year. So I'm like, great, this is a problem for them
Cool.
too. Exciting. There's an opportunity here, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I started to work on those sites and get the scrapers going. Um, the next thing I wanted to do is actually get alerts going to people.
Okay.
So I wanted to use email to send a newsletter every day to say, hey, here's some shows coming in your area, and send it out every day. Because I say every day instead of every week or weekend, because once I got all the events coming in, I realized, man, every night something cool is happening. If it's not music, it's a trivia night somewhere or a karaoke night,
Yeah.
or like there's always something going on. And I thought it was like just the weekends here because of how quiet it is where I'm at in the suburbs. But no, the place is popping every night if you know where
Yeah.
to
If
go.
you've got a bar, you got to have something to get people in.
Right. And I was just surprised. Like there's like one place that every Tuesday they do trivia night. And then there's a karaoke night every Thursday at one area here. And I'm like, oh, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Cool. Still solving my problem.
Great.
However, I when I looked up how to best do this,
Mm-hmm.
what I found was essentially, we can set up like the events calendar plugin makes an RSS feed,
Okay.
and I found a couple of different services out there that will pull from your RSS feed and send a daily email to people based on what it finds in your RSS feed. I'm like, great, that's what I need.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up for one of them, Active Campaign, and
Oh, good company. For
good
those
company.
of you who don't know, I currently work for Active Campaign, and I met Isaac when he worked at Active Campaign. So this is not a particular plug. We're just joking, or we're not joking. It is a good company. You should definitely use them and keep
Well,
keep me employed.
I tried to work with them. I tried to work with their RSS feed. So
Oh,
some
that is
feedback
the
for your
worst.
team, Jeffrey.
Oh no, the RSS feed is the worst thing in the world. That is
I
the feature.
abandoned our Active Campaign because of how limiting their RSS feed campaign was.
I'm
I
sorry to
tried
hear that.
Mailchimp.
Yes,
Same problem. Mailchimp's RSS feed, even
I mean
though
they're a
my
bunch of
events were in the
monkeys.
right order, it kept publishing them and from like event created date instead of
Mm,
the date the event is happening. And my RSS feed was correct. Their feed was resorting my items, which is really frustrating.
that
Um,
makes sense.
so
Or
and I can't do anything about that. And then they were also trying to nickel and dime at Mailchimp was with like the templates that I use. I couldn't use my own custom template. I had to use one of theirs, and then they limited the column, or like I couldn't use a 2 or 3 column layout without paying for the upgraded plan, but the free tier I could have a 1 column layout. That's a very strange thing to gate me on. And I couldn't
that
customize it and make it look nice.
that does seem weird. I mean, I'm not against anyone making you pay, but
Yeah, I
the
mean, if it's good service, it's good service.
pay
But yeah,
the complexity of the template seems like a weird thing to charge you on.
and to be fair, I wanted to do all kinds of cool stuff with the event thing anyway. Like I wanted to get something going, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
did. I think Mailchimp I did use what they had, and I sent out the events out of order for a bit just to say, okay, this is my proof of concept, even though it was weird looking. But what I wanted to do is find a cool way to like subscribe to a city or
Mm-hmm.
25 miles of a city, get events related to your area.
Oh, that doesn't
Events.
sound like things that would. Just going back to, you've got WordPress, which is a display platform, right?
Mhm.
It does displays, and you can do plugins to accept data. But now, if you're going to do, I want to subscribe complexity, right? You're going to
Yeah.
need a user account where they can register their preferences, and that seems beyond WordPress to me.
Well, the plugins can kind of help with it.
Okay.
Like you can the plugins for events calendar, for example, you can specify the venue of the event, and the venue will have a location, and you're
Mm-hmm.
able to send things out based on different tags and categories. And so I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll kind of like hack this to make a tag that is Westminster or Arvada or another city nearby me, and then have people when people subscribe, I can have different tagged categories based on what they subscribe to, and somehow use that as like to filter out what events they would see. So I was working within the limitations of the system, which
Mm-hmm.
is where it kind of clicked with me. Like this is essentially I'm working with old code, quote asterisk. It's new, but it's limited code that I don't quite understand because I didn't write it.
Mm-hmm.
It's old events code plugins from people from before me that I'm trying to hack to make work. And I like hacked around with some templates that would be sent out with different plugins, trying not to use Mailchimp to see if I could send it a different way and have more control over the template. And that was a lot of work. And by this point, by the way, I probably spent a month on the project. Probably minimum 12 hours a week, let's say. So when I say a month, well, and I still have a
You're
full
like
time
50
job. I'm doing
hours.
it. Yeah, I'm doing it like on the side. But I mean, like maybe even more than that because like I was getting obsessed with can I do this? Can I do that? In the nights, a lot of the weekends, and then over the course of go ahead.
I was going to say, so it sounds like you are, at this phase, you are gluing different components together, and it is a frustrating experience because all these components were written by people to do whatever it is they do, and not, well, it's not custom code for you. You were spending a lot of time in glue work. Where?
For just the mail sending piece.
Okay,
Everything
just
else was
mail. Yeah.
working fine.
Okay.
Like my events aggregator things are pulling in. The plugin itself has a cron that
Mm-hmm.
runs every day to pull new events and to update old events with new
Mm-hmm.
data if the event was updated. And the scrapers are still scraping, the little web scrapers that we built to pull from the hyperlocal ones.
Okay.
And
So the
that's working
only,
fine.
so at this point, you've got a back end, you've got a front end, which is various pieces that you've glued together, some free, some for pay, and all that works well. The problem you're having is with email sending,
Mm-hmm.
or formatting your email sending. And are you getting subscribers?
From hyperlocal stuff, like we'll say 10 subscribers. So people who
Okay.
go to the same venues as me and friends of mine who I've shared it with who are like, oh, this is neat. This actually helped me find something too. So mostly just word of mouth and friends and a small kind of like community, a music community that I've got going.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a passion project, so it's not like blowing up or anything. Yeah.
Okay.
So we go from the summer into the fall, and around late September, I ended up sending out some more messages to a couple more venues who had gotten back to me who were still interested. And whenever somebody gets back to me and is interested in it, that kind of sparks. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tinker more on this. So I wasn't building it all throughout the entire time, but I started in the summer, then it kind of like fell off for a bit and came back in and had bursts of inspiration whenever people would respond or sign up for it.
So you built it. It was scratching your itch. It was
Mm-hmm.
scratching your friends, your community, which was just your friends at this
Mm-hmm.
point, itch. Um, and you weren't particularly trying to scratch, like you had a vision and goals, but you weren't particularly working towards them. And that was okay because you were still getting what you wanted out of the project.
Right. And I would make fixes here and there. I would use some other plugins for like SEO optimization, which WordPress does a good job of because it's such an old system. They got plenty of plugins and
Hmm.
people who have spent a long time trying to make sure every page is optimized right. So I was able to kind of tinker in that world for a bit with analytics, Google Search Console, get my page a little bit higher up on rankings. Um, but one problem that I had was if you just scrape events, Google doesn't like that. It
Hmm.
considers your content duplicative. If
That's
your site is
true.
just a pass through, you don't have any unique content on your own. And I'm like,
Right.
well, Google, might like me, but this is still valuable because I'm getting an aggregation of all these places, and I can sort for things that are happening local to me that Google is missing.
Right.
So
Google, in this case, doesn't like you because you're a competitor and you're doing something better than them. It's a very hyper local, hyper niche thing,
yeah,
but you are not creating any new content, let's say. You
right.
are aggregating it and you're letting people search and find it, and that's Google's job.
That's Google's job. So
Yes.
I noticed this. Well, I mean, they just flat out tell you this on the Search Console. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is why you got all these cool events, but there's no unique content that you're generating here. I'm like, well, the aggregation is the unique content.
Right.
But whatever. Okay, sure. You
Yeah.
know. Anyway, so I let this is essentially the backstory of the project here.
Okay.
It kind of sits here for a while, and all these little plugins that I've purchased here and there for SEO optimization, they all push you for like they'll make it a little frustrating to use the free tier. Like
Okay.
for example, if you want to connect to any of the mailing stuff in WordPress, not necessarily the RSS feed thing for Mailchimp, but like sending one-off mails for your contact forms in
Mm.
WordPress, which I wanted if people wanted to say, hey, can you list my site too, or give feedback. You can use a plugin for that, and you could spend all this time configuring it yourself to go to Google and set up your API key and connect it here and give permission.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you just pay $5 and hit this one-time fix plugin, it'll just do it for you. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to do it the way I know how to do because I'm a developer and
Right.
spend a little more time, But they end up being kind of like time consuming. And this at some point I've spent many weeks on this,
Mm-hmm.
um, tweaking here and there, configuration options, trying to optimize for SEO, all these little things that I'm buying plugins for. And then all the while getting hammered by, oh, you should upgrade now. You should consider upgrading. And all these plugins want you to pay $50 a year, and you got like 20 plugins.
That's okay. So that's like $1,000 a year. Now you're starting to talk about a lot of money for a passion project.
Right. And I don't necessarily upgrade all of them. I'm just like, I've upgraded a few of them because like the events calendar one for integrating Meetup and having
Mm-hmm.
it pull Meetup and update every day. That costs money. And there were a couple of plugins to events calendar. Like I wanted to have different pages show different views
Mm-hmm.
and like by default. And there was one option there like, oh, we'll let you do that if you upgrade to the pro version, which lets you sort by the city. And I'm like, well, okay. Because again, I didn't want to go through there and configure it, but that's how they kind of got me. And so I paid here and there and I'm like, whatever, what's this amount per year if I got it working for me?
Well, especially time is money. Money
Right.
is time. And if you've now spent $1,000 on this passion project, but you've explored all of the ways that you want this to work, right?
Yeah.
You're in the product seat. You're spending money to get the product to work the way you think it should, and seeing the results. You've got your user feedback, which is only your friend, so I'm sure they'll tell you it's all great, even if it was.
It is
But
great.
it's totally great. I mean, it's scratching your itch, which
Mm-hmm.
for a passion project means that you've succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
And if it scratches anybody else's itch, that's great too. But
Yeah.
so, okay. So now you've got a backend that is a bunch of scrapers that you've written using AI, and they probably break periodically, but that's okay because you wrote them with AI and you don't really care because they're all weird one-offs for edge case. Your front
Mm-hmm.
end, your database and front end is WordPress, and it's annoying you because it's all hard to configure because it's all things that people want to pay. They want you to
Yes.
pay for. They wrote it to be a specific way. They wrote it with varying degrees of technical skills. And then there's email, which is frustrating you because it doesn't work the way nobody's plugin for RSS works the way you want it to. ActiveCampaign and MailChimp's RSS feeders don't work correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're frustrated there. Are you frustrated with the back end? Is the back end making you happy or frustrated?
Neither. I mean, it's doing this job. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say a backend makes me just have. It wasn't like, oh, this is hyper performant, but it wasn't like
Well,
so fucking terrible. Yeah.
if something broke every day, the back end would be annoying. Like if you set this stuff up and for 9 out
Okay,
of
I'm
10
happy with
bars,
it.
you never think about it again, I'd
We'll
be
say I'm
happy
happy.
with it.
Yeah.
If I had to tweak something every week to get it to keep going, I'd be annoyed.
I didn't have to tweak the backend a whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're rewriting everything.
Well, I'll let it sit there for a bit, and this is
Okay.
in September where I kind of like let it be on the back burner for a bit.
Okay.
I gotten what I needed out of it, and I was thinking, oh, this would be cool to make it work this way, but I didn't get a lot of people signing up or sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, and some of the venues didn't reach out to me, but I got about like 12 venues that were interested, which is not
Mm-hmm.
none, but it's also not a lot. And the event scrapers are kind of annoying. Again, I was using AI as after I configured. I told it how to do all the things to get to the website and what URLs to scrape.
Mm-hmm.
It tried, then I had to configure what it found because it did its best, but you still had to you had to nudge it. But
Parsing HTML is the worst.
it's the worst for AI a year ago. And this
Okay.
is where recent news kind of blew my mind. And you might have heard about the recent explosion of OpenClaw, recent
Mm-hmm.
explosion of Anthropic's new dispatch slash co-work features, which I think came out actually over the weekend, this past weekend.
This
Um,
is late March,
Late March.
2026.
Yeah. And so some of the I was listening to some podcast that was talking about OpenClaw and how people have been configuring it, and how people had been doing. Again, this is more of the agentic workflow stuff, where
Mm-hmm.
instead of going to one AI window and saying I want all these things and being overcomplicated, you essentially split out AI models into different roles. And this is going to be very dehumanizing, so stick with me here. But
Okay.
you make a product dot AI or products.md file for Claude. Um, and then you have it do a specific role. It can only do this one role, very targeted, very focused role.
Mm-hmm.
And for everything you do, you employ a different agent to do that thing. That way, you don't give it all the context. It only needs to know just the context of what its role is supposed to be, and that keeps it very focused and less expensive.
This sounds
And
very assembly line, which is
right,
fine.
and so the analogy here is, especially when you're talking about different models, and some models are very expensive to use because they think longer and they're smarter. Uh, if I had an employee that I was paying $200,000 a year for
Mm-hmm.
the best engineering work, and then I suddenly needed to do just some simple data entry, having that same person do that data entry would be wildly not economical.
Right.
Um, so what you do in that case, in the analogy here, is you pay somebody else for a data entry thing, which is a lot easier to do than the high level engineering architecture.
Right. You can pay somebody 40 or 50 grand a year to do data entry.
Yeah. So the for the Claude MD analogy is swapping to a simpler model. There's a lot of models to use, and some you don't need to use for like the heaviest thinking stuff. You can use for
Mm-hmm.
like obvious tasks, do this, do that, right? And so you set up a workflow. You almost kind of make your own company. Don't name don't name your roles people names because it feels terrible and awful. But name your agents what they do. Like a software engineering role, product role, brand role. And then I discovered very quickly I needed a security role
Mm.
because it made some code that was not secure. Um, and so essentially, you can tell Claude, "Hey, I want to build this thing, and here are the agents and what that you should use," and let them each pass off work to these particular roles.
Okay.
So that's the agentic workflow people are talking about these days, where you can say specific things, set specific models for those roles, and then also set skills for those roles, where you define kind of how you want to critically think about things. I can say, I'm a software engineer, I'm a principal engineer, I'm going to set a principal engineer skill that when someone tells me to do work, I question it. Do I need to do this? Do I
Mm.
need to check against priorities? Someone gave me work, but it looks like a low priority ticket. Why am I working on this? And contextually, is this actually aligned with our business and our brand? And I can check the brand's agent. And so it makes it to where your AI doesn't take things literally. Instead of going, I am going, like if you were very, if in the product world, sometimes products overreaches and tells you, you should build this. This should be an API endpoint. This should be that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, they should tell you the problem. That way, the engineer can figure it out. So
Right. That's called solutioning. And
solutioning. So
yeah.
sometimes in the ticket you pick up, the AI wants to please you, and it tries to do exactly what you told it to do, and it was written by somebody who solutioned from product. And what you need to do is have an intermediary skill that goes and looks at that and goes, I see what you're getting at. Before you work on that, consider if we've already kind of built half of that over here, and we just
Mm-hmm.
need to improve that instead of building a fresh one like the ticket asks us to do. And then also consider those column names where they said use this column, and this column name, which I've seen before too. Does that match our standard in our database? Does that match common known standards? And all these
Mm-hmm.
things that you would think about to add context to it, so where you're not
Right.
literally working on the ticket like as a assembly line kind of thing. You need to question it and that provide context. All that to say, but like a big drum roll here. So so I tinkered with OpenClaw a bit, and that's where you can configure different agents, and they can have them reach out and talk to each other and do things for you. But in general, that's just Claude code too. Like you can set up agents in Claude code. OpenClaw is just like this open source way people have found to kind of orchestrate a company, essentially. It's similar to the Get Shit Done repo and some of the other repos that you may have seen people using out there that is also a one-man company kind of repo.
Mm-hmm.
But I, at the same time I was tinkering with it, Claude Code released upgrades to their code base, their platform. One of them was Cowork, and then Dispatch, which lets you talk to your running local version from your phone and give it commands while you're away, like remote control it essentially. And so I was looking at both over the weekend, and so I decided, okay, I have a podcast called Never Rewrite.
Yes,
I haven't.
Poke the bear.
At this point, I have at this point a half a year old project that's slow, clunky, hard to configure. I don't quite understand all the pieces of it. I understand parts of the pieces of it. I wonder if I could build another system and have it running alongside my old system,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to meet parity with it, and then just do a full a big bang cutover if it works
Mm-hmm.
like I expect it to do, and all these things that I've told myself not to do over these past few couple years, 3 years, yes.
It's 3 years.
And so I wrote this prompt, and I basically said, check out this other website, when it can navigate to it. So check out this other website. Here's my goal. Your goal is to become the best event aggregator in Colorado. Your top objective is for all your events to be accurate, no exception. And for the events, you must have blah, 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 and like list of things like you have to have a URL back to the website you scraped from, this, that, and wrote laws for it, essentially. Build it as cheaply as possible using the most modern technology. And I was also kind of intentionally vague here. I didn't want to be like very technical. I wanted to be like somebody who's not super technical asking, can you just get this thing up and going for me as an MVP? Mm-hmm. Use your best judgment. I literally typed that in there and hit enter. And it generated actually one other thing. I did ask, at the end of this, I want a URL that I can navigate to and see the site. So this was local at first. And I just sat there and watched it. And then you can see it reason through everything. It ended up pulling and using Next.js. The back end it picked was Postgres.
Reasonable.
It started writing all the logic for the events. And then it gave me a link to essentially what looked like my site, old site, but much better. I even told it's using color theory and modern branding, act as a UI UX expert, design what colors you would use for an event website, all these little things that for the different roles that I configured for it. And then it started building scrapers, and this is where it did an exceptional job. It just looked throughout Colorado for all the biggest venue names, navigated to each of those websites, found the events page for them, scraped them way better, way faster with zero configuration from me, and generated the site. So the things that it got wrong were occasionally there were parser errors. It would pull, it would think somebody's artist name was upcoming Paramore, instead of just being Paramore, right? So there was a little bit of configuration to be had. They would pull duplicate events because different websites might also list the same event, but they all went back to the same ticketing URL normally. So I found a way to dedupe it and make sure if there was a unique URL, we just amend that information. But all this is done through prompts. I didn't code anything. And
did you review the code?
No. I intentionally did not review the code.
Okay.
And I'll get to that in a second with the security issue. Because my point was I want to see how dumb and lazy I can be to get this thing up and going.
Yeah.
And because I think that's kind of... I want to imagine somebody who has zero technical experience coming up and doing this. And they're not going to review code. They're not going to look at it and go, oh, yeah, it looks good to me. But I wanted to pretend like I'm a CEO of a different person in the CEO of the future coming and saying, well, why would I need investors if I can just have this thing build an MVP for me? And that was kind of
you're a future entrepreneur. I don't need anyone. I can bootstrap it all by myself.
Right. And so notably, I got to thinking about all those different plugins that I paid for. And I said, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
here's what I want you to do too. Find a way to deploy this thing. And I said, okay. And it checks and it sets up Vercel for me, a free tier of Vercel. I said, okay, we need a database too. So find a way to get a free tier of a database. So it goes to Supabase, which I'd never used Supabase, but it hosts Postgres and there's a free tier.
Okay.
Deploy yourself, and it did a good job. It deployed itself, and then it integrated with GitHub for me, so that every time I push to GitHub, it will deploy. And then it set up Circle CI, or no, I guess maybe it's not Circle CI anymore. I think it's just Google GitHub CI, which provides you some minutes for actions that run. So
Okay.
I did get a little nitpicky here and told it to set up its own pipeline of like running tests and test coverage, which a CEO wouldn't do. But I just wanted to see if it could do it, and
Yeah.
it did.
Did it initially write any tests?
No, initially it wrote 0 tests.
Okay.
I had to tell it to do that later, and code coverage. But once I did that, it generated 100% code coverage,
Hmm.
which, and I can also tell it to basically fail the pipeline if you've decreased code coverage, which is nice. So at this point, it's deployed the entire thing, and I said, okay, well, we need to send out a daily newsletter. How do we do that? And it's like, oh, I can use a cron in Vercel to do that, and it sets up a cron, and I'm like, okay, well, generate an event newsletter you think would be relevant for people who like and are curious about upcoming events in their area. And it makes a beautiful template, way better than any of the ones that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to scrape like low ticket alerts from some websites, upcoming shows. I had the idea to integrate with Spotify and YouTube. So I
Okay.
gave it environment variables. So if it matched those artists, it could also pull genre. It could pull how many monthly listeners. So then it generated its own hot upcoming artists that are like popular. So if the artist had like above 100,000 monthly listeners, there was a
Hmm.
section on the newsletter and a section on the website. If there was almost sold out of tickets, there's a section on the newsletter and the website. And it built all that for me. I didn't ask it to build any of those features. I just thought, given the data you got, what do you think would be relevant for people?
Right.
And the template that went out is awesome. So both it did a way better job at making a template for me. It customized it to be relevant. And I said, actually, come to think of it, build a login and registration system using, a verified login and registration tool like a Next.js plugin, not like don't roll your own, please. It did that. I said,
Okay.
upon sign up, I want you to pick pick cities you live in, or pick an area code, because it would be nice if you could also send events that are relevant or within X miles of somebody and let them configure what their daily digest looks like. And it built it, and it worked perfectly. And I said, okay, well, let's assume somebody could sign up, then claim a venue, or tell me they want to claim a venue. Let me build an admin portal option for me where I can assign a portal to a user account. And it built it for me, and it worked perfectly. Like I can click edit and assign it. And like now, where it goofed was I said, okay, now review yourself and say, is there anything insecure? And the API endpoints it made were public for the
Mm-hmm.
admin thing, so it had to lock those down. It committed my environment variables by accident. So it told me, oh,
Whoopsie.
we're gonna remove that from your Git history. You should rotate your credentials. And I'm like, cool. Well, at least you caught it. Appreciate it. So it missed some
Mm-hmm.
things, but for the amount of things it got right for a free tier, no
Mm-hmm.
plugins, customized.
Well, but this is not free tier of Claude, right? You're paying for Claude, or
No, I did pay the max tier for Claude. Currently, I think is $200 a month. That's what I'm paying for.
okay.
So for $200, I had it to generate all this. And it like I had to just continue writing features and scrapers. And at one point, I said, I'm going to bed. Keep scraping all the different venues and events and cities, and then when I wake up tomorrow, I want a bunch more. And it did. And I hit enter, merged the code, you know, ran the scraper. I got a ton more events. And then the next night I said, okay, don't publish these, but assuming we're going to expand to all 50 states,
Mm-hmm.
just start writing scrapers for everything across America. And I went to bed and I woke up and there was 50,000 lines of code for all these other huge ones in New York and California. And I'm like, man, okay. So at this point, I'm trying to get a pipeline going where it will kind of self-curate and audit and find issues. Because one time I found it said free $15. And I'm like, that's weird. So no one's going to use this website if they can't trust the data. So I'm
Right.
like, all right, I want you to audit yourself and go to the events that you've made and find out if they match the end URL that you would go to. And if they don't, I want you to write a GitHub issue outlining what happened, what you think is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to do this every 5 hours. And it built a cron that does that every 5 hours.
It goes through every event every 5 hours?
I told it to go through every event because why not?
Okay.
Which is, at this point, 1,800 events across Colorado. I didn't do the publishing of all the nationwide ones yet because I was like, at this point, I don't have the data accurate enough, and I don't want to start scraping all these other websites quite yet. But I wanted the ability to do that if suddenly I just wanted to go live with it, right? Then I said, okay, well, I want you to daily. I want you to check all GitHub actions. Not GitHub actions, GitHub issues.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are issues, I want you to take each issue and try to fix them issues. And then have me a generated PR that will try to fix the issues. This is where it kind of gets a little wonky because every now and then it would interpret things incorrectly. It would say, oh, one event URL says 8 p.m. This starts at another event URL says 7 p.m. for the same event on their main website. I'm going to default to 8 p.m. for all events for this in case there's an issue and we need a fallback. And I'm like, no, don't default to a time. I don't want people showing up at the wrong time, one time it said, there are two artists here, John and something, and we need to split on the ampersand and look for different artists. I'm like, well, did you consider if the artist's name was like Simon and Garfunkel? And it was like, we didn't do that. We should do that later in the pipeline. We don't need to split here. We need to make sure that's not an artist first before we split. So you had to kind of help guide it in a few areas. So diminishing returns, essentially, once you had the whole thing bootstrapped, trying to curate it became frustrating. It kept getting, kept going back. It might regress. So then I started telling it, look at your previous solved issues to make sure you're not regressing from a previous issue. But I did see diminishing returns at this point. However, the product that it made, and mind you, the amount of hours it spent is not the amount of hours I spent prompting it. It did 30 hours of work across 2 days, and I prompted it over the course of 4 hours, maybe.
Okay.
And it built a way better website that solves the problem much better currently, and is now trying to self-heal with accuracy. And once I get that in an area where I think it's mostly okay, 95% accurate, maybe I'll roll it out to other areas. But I was just astounded at how much better of a job it did for how much cheaper.
Yeah. Okay, so I got follow-up questions.
Mm-hmm.
Did you end up reusing any of the old scraping scripts?
No.
Did you have your AI refer to them at all, or
no? Fresh.
So you
I threw the whole thing away.
You threw the whole thing away,
and then I did a big bang cutover from the DNS to the new one. Yeah.
Okay, but you still have a back end and front end, but now the front end is instead of being glued together WordPress components, your front end is now glued together Next.js components.
Glued together is not as glued together as these plugins were. They were very disparate in WordPress.
You've assembled Next.js, the framework, right? You've moved down a level, You've moved down a level from I'm using WordPress, which is written on PHP, and it's got a whole plugin economy, and now I'm using Next.js, and it's written on top of whatever it's written on top of JavaScript, and it's what it is. So you've moved down a level. You've added tests, which you didn't have before, really, because they weren't your plugins.
Correct. Yeah.
Let's see.
I also had to manually dedupe things on the events calendar plugin. Like they had an option for it because occasionally they would have duplicate venues, and you had to run that occasionally. And then I could tell it to build its own dedupe pipeline, which is kind of nice.
Right. So I'm thinking it through in terms of, well, one, never rewrite, and two, actually running this as a operation, right? So you had a this is a hyperlocal event aggregator, and the problem with a hyperlocal event aggregator is always the amount of operational work that goes into it,
Yeah.
right? You've got to maintain the front end is once you get it up and running, fairly static. It's all about the data. It's all about the scraping. It's all about the fixing things. And
Hmm.
this is where it's always been very expensive. Uh, Scale ups like Grubhub or DoorDash or Instacart. And effectively, they end up paying tons of people, humans in lower paying
Hmm.
world, a ton of money to do the manual data entry. And you haven't really solved that problem. Right. So if this was going to be a going concern and you had a business model, you would still need to pay people to fix your data operationally.
Right. Well, depends on how much I want it to do. Because, like, if I want to know that an event is occurring and I want to know the day it's occurring, that is 100% accurate. What is not accurate is if it tries to extract the artists, and I was trying to get creative with it and pull like from extract the artist that way I could enrich an artist tab with like the latest album release and all this kind of stuff on top of that, and then the ticket price. So if I
Mm-hmm.
hid the ticket price and just said it's upcoming at March whatever date and let them go directly to the URL to get all the details, it's a
Mm-hmm.
solved problem. I'm just trying to get fancy with it.
Right. Well, you're also trying. In this case, it's a you've got a number of solved problems where it's a standardish website. You're trying to display event data, like with a calendar. These are all fairly standard components.
Mm-hmm.
You want to send email, which is a fairly standard thing. The data you're scraping, the people want you to scrape it, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to make it as easy as possible. They're
Well,
not doing a good job
now
in all
some of
cases.
them, because I told it to go through all the venues in Colorado. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't contact all those people. So the original people wanted me to scrape them. But now I need to reach out to all the other people and be like, hey, by the way.
But as a general
Yeah.
statement, a
Yeah.
venue wants people to get the word out,
Yes. I mean,
right? This
I
is
would
not
imagine.
something where venues are putting stuff on their website and they don't want anybody to know about it.
Right.
If they put stuff on their website, they probably want, generally speaking, this is what people want to do. And so the the transformational aspects of what you're doing is you've got somewhat standard data that you're making more standard. I imagine your database is not normalized very well at all.
Well, I had it pass through and I said, check your database and make sure the correct indexes exist, that your data structure makes sense. That was just the way I
Mm-hmm.
worded it. And that there are no non-performant queries that you've written. And it did go through and add a lot of indexes and fix some N+1 queries like that.
Yeah, but I imagine you don't have like a states table and then a cities and then a zip
No,
code
no,
and
no,
like
no.
in all the
No, it's all in the
normalized.
same.
Yeah.
Well, I only briefly looked at the table. Again, like I'm trying to come at it from a dumb CEO point of view.
Right, right, right. I am thinking about it from a could you actually maintain this thing
Yeah.
aspect of it, and you've got a small thing that you've now replaced with a larger version, and you are the customer, so you know exactly what it is.
Hmm.
And so you're like, have we broken the never rewrite rule? And I think,
Well,
well,
there's a good stopping point right here.
okay,
I think we
tune
should
in
take a
next time.
break. We should take a break, and we're going to continue this conversation because we have a lot more to say about it. But yes, let's take just a quick break here.
Tune in next time, folks. Same bad time, same bad channel. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.